Let's face it, at some point you're going to encounter people who don't respect you. It could be at work, in your relationships, or even within your own family. But here's the truth. Respect is not something you demand. It's something you command. So the question isn't, why don't they respect me? The real question is, how do I handle this in a way that elevates me instead of bringing me down? Most people react in one of two ways. They either shrink and let others walk all over them, or they explode in frustration. Neither works. The key is to respond, not react, with power, clarity, and confidence. Let's explore the first key point in greater detail: setting boundaries with certainty. One of the most powerful things you can do, however, is an act of self-respect, and it shifts the dynamic in any interaction. It's crucial to understand that boundaries are not negotiable. The moment someone crosses a line, you must immediately make it clear that their behavior is unacceptable. This isn't about being aggressive or defensive. It's about asserting your own value and teaching others how to treat you. In a world where many people are conditioned to avoid confrontation, standing up for yourself can be a game changer. When you set a boundary with certainty, you're not asking for permission, nor are you apologizing for your need for respect. You're simply stating a fact. This is the way I expect to be treated, and I will not tolerate anything less. It's about being calm, composed, and absolutely clear on what you will and won't accept. And when you stand firm in that, people begin to recognize that you're not someone who can be pushed around. The beauty of this is that it empowers you to take back control. However, setting boundaries can be uncomfortable at first, especially if you're not used to doing it. It requires you to be vulnerable, to express your feelings and needs in an open and direct manner. Many of us have been conditioned to avoid conflict or to keep the peace, often at the expense of our own well-being. But if you keep tolerating disrespect, you'll only reinforce a cycle where people feel entitled to cross your boundaries. It's important to remember that setting boundaries is not selfish, it's essential for healthy relationships. When you fail to set boundaries, you're essentially saying that the other person's needs and wants are more important than your own. That's a dangerous game to play. When you state your boundary clearly and without hesitation, you teach others how to interact with you. It doesn't matter if they're a colleague, a friend, or a family member. If they have any respect for you, they'll adjust their behavior accordingly. If they don't, you've already done your part by standing up for yourself. You have to remember that you are not responsible for how others react to your boundaries. You're only responsible for maintaining them. The power of setting boundaries comes not just from enforcing them in the moment, but also from the cumulative effect they have on your life. Over time, as you consistently set clear limits, people will start to respect your space, your time, and your energy. This creates a positive feedback loop where respect and understanding thrive, and you find yourself surrounded by people who honor you for who you are. Finally, remember that boundaries are a sign of strength, not weakness. They signify that you understand your value and are unwilling to compromise it for anyone or anything. By setting boundaries with certainty, you are taking ownership of your life and your relationships. It's one of the most empowering things you can do for yourself. Let's dive deeper into the second key point: staying unshakable and emotionally intelligent. When someone disrespects you, your first instinct might be to react. You might feel anger, frustration, or even a sense of betrayal, and those emotions can be overwhelming. But here's the most important thing you need to understand. The strongest person in any situation is the one who controls their emotions, not the one who is controlled by them. The ability to stay calm in the face of disrespect is one of the most powerful tools you can develop, and it's rooted in emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions, as well as the emotions of others. When you're able to do this, you gain control over your reactions. Instead of being swept away by anger or hurt, you take a step back and choose how to respond. This skill is essential when dealing with disrespectful behavior. When someone disrespects you, it's easy to get emotionally triggered. But here's the secret: the moment you react emotionally, you lose your power. Whether you lash out in anger, shut down in sadness, or retreat in fear, your emotions can cloud your judgment and make the situation worse. What happens when you stay emotionally intelligent is that you disarm the disrespectful person without even saying a word. You become the calm in the storm, the rock that stands firm. Your unshakable calmness forces the other person to reassess their behavior. They may even begin to feel uncomfortable, realizing that their usual tactics don't affect you. To stay unshakable, it's essential to pause before reacting. Take a deep breath Ground yourself and give yourself a moment to process what's happening. This moment of clarity allows you to decide how you want to respond instead of being driven by impulse. It also enables you to assess the situation from a place of logic rather than emotion. When you stay composed, you communicate to the other person that you are not easily rattled. You set a clear boundary without raising your voice or getting defensive. This often forces the disrespectful individual to reconsider their actions because they can see that they have no power over you. Another key aspect of emotional intelligence is empathy. You don't have to agree with someone's disrespectful behavior, but understanding why they might be acting this way allows you to approach the situation with more clarity. Maybe they're projecting their own insecurities, or perhaps they're simply having a bad day. While this doesn't justify disrespectful behavior, understanding their emotional state can help you remain centered and choose your response wisely. Remember, your emotional state is your responsibility. When you react with anger or frustration, guess who you can help and say yes to? Yourself. And maybe the person you're humming along with, doing a live, you're allowing someone else to control your emotions, but when you stay calm and centered, you maintain control over your energy and your mindset. You teach others that your peace of mind is non-negotiable. Staying emotionally intelligent doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. It means processing them in a healthy, constructive way. When you acknowledge your feelings and let them pass without being controlled by them, you make space for a more effective response. Ultimately, emotional intelligence is the key to handling disrespect with grace. When you choose to respond with control and self-awareness, you turn what could have been a confrontation into an opportunity for growth. Instead of letting someone's disrespect define you, you define the situation and maintain your power. This is the true art of handling disrespect. Let's take a closer look at the third key point. Speak less, assert more. When confronted with disrespect, it's easy to feel the urge to justify yourself, explain your position, or argue your point. But here's the truth. Respect is not earned through endless explanations. It's earned through clear, decisive action and assertiveness. Speaking less doesn't mean you're backing down or avoiding the issue. On the contrary, it means you're taking control of the conversation and making your message more powerful by removing any unnecessary words. The more you say, the more room you give for misinterpretation, distraction, or emotional escalation. The moment you start defending yourself too much, you give the other person the opportunity to continue questioning your value. Instead, assertiveness is about being direct, clear, and confident without feeling the need to over-explain or seek approval. When you know your worth, you don't have to prove it with a long-winded speech. A short, strong statement can do more than 1,000 words ever will. And it communicates your stance without aggression. By speaking less and asserting more, you convey that you have boundaries that will not be crossed. You'll notice that when you assert yourself in this manner, people tend to respond differently. The longer you talk, the more you give someone the opportunity to argue back or manipulate the situation. By saying less, you put the focus on your clarity, confidence, and authority. The key here is to be present in the moment and express yourself with purpose. Every word you say should have a clear intention, leaving no room for ambiguity. This approach can be particularly powerful in professional settings where you want to maintain authority without escalating the situation. If a colleague disrespects you, instead of getting caught in a back and forth argument, you could calmly say, "I expect to be treated with respect. If this continues, I'll need to reconsider how we work together." This shows your boundaries are firm, and it forces the other person to understand that their behavior has consequences. Another aspect of this is avoiding defensiveness. When someone disrespects you, there's a temptation to justify your actions, explain your intentions, or apologize for things you didn't do. But when you assert yourself effectively, you stop seeking validation from others. You don't need to explain why you deserve respect. You simply demand it. This confidence can be incredibly disarming to someone who expects you to argue or beg for respect. By speaking less and asserting more, you also stop overthinking the situation. You don't need to anticipate every possible response or outcome. Assertiveness comes from a place of knowing who you are, what you stand for, and the value you bring to the table. This mindset frees you from the need for constant validation, and you begin to let your actions and words carry the weight. Ultimately, assertiveness is the cornerstone of commanding respect. The less you explain, the more you assert, and the more power you have in any interaction. By speaking with confidence, setting clear expectations, and maintaining control over your words, you create a space where respect is not only given, but expected. Now let's dive into the fourth key point. detach yourself. Instead, if you learn to detach from their disrespect, you create emotional space that allows you to protect your inner peace and your sense of self. This detachment doesn't mean you are indifferent to the situation or that you allow disrespect to slide. Rather, it's about recognizing that how someone treats you speaks more about their emotional state, upbringing, or insecurities than it does about you. Often, disrespect comes from a place of fear, insecurity, or unresolved issues within the other person. The moment you detach, you remove yourself from the emotional vortex of their behavior and realize that you are not responsible for their actions or their perceptions of you. The first step in detaching is understanding that you don't control others. You cannot change someone else's behavior unless they choose to change. But you can control how you respond. When you make the conscious decision not to internalize someone's disrespect, people who disrespect you often do so because they themselves feel disempowered or frustrated. They may lash out as a form of self-protection or to regain control in an insecure moment. This insight helps you realize that their behavior is not about you. You don't need to take their disrespect to heart. By detaching emotionally, you remain unshaken, centered, and secure in your own worth. Another important aspect of detaching is recognizing that you don't need to win every interaction. Disrespect often triggers a desire to prove yourself or to fight back in some way, but when you detach from the need to win the situation or to have the last word, you gain freedom. You can walk away from a conversation knowing that you didn't lose anything by not engaging. In fact, you preserve your peace, your integrity, and your emotional energy. Detaching also gives you the ability to respond rather than react. When you take a step back and don't let someone's disrespect trigger an emotional response, you give yourself the power to respond thoughtfully. You no longer operate from a place of reaction, but from a place of intentionality. This creates space for you to choose your words wisely, stay calm, and assert your boundaries without getting tangled in the other person's emotional chaos. By detaching from disrespect, you can observe the situation objectively. You start to see that the disrespectful person may be dealing with their own issues, projecting their frustrations onto others. Their actions may have nothing to do with you, but everything to do with their inner struggles. When you detach, you stop taking their behavior as a personal attack, and instead see it for what it really is, a reflection of their internal state. The more you practice detachment, the more you will realize that your happiness is not dependent on others' opinions or behavior. You can live your life with joy and peace, regardless of how others treat you. You can remain grounded in your values, your purpose, and your self-worth. By detaching, you make it clear that no one can take your peace unless you allow them to. In the end, detaching is a powerful tool because it protects you from being swept up in someone else's drama. It allows you to maintain your emotional balance, preserve your mental clarity, and continue walking your own path without being pulled off course by the negativity of others. It is an act of self-love and self-preservation. By detaching from disrespect, you stand firm in your own power and remind yourself that your worth is not determined by how others treat you. It is something you hold within yourself. Let's explore the fifth key point: set boundaries and walk away. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are guidelines that tell others how you expect to be treated. Setting boundaries means you are actively deciding how you will allow people to treat you. It's about recognizing that you have the right to dictate the terms of your own interactions and not allow anyone to cross lines that make you uncomfortable. When you establish firm boundaries, you communicate that you value yourself and your peace. You teach others how to treat you by consistently enforcing these limits. Often people disrespect others because they believe there will be no consequences. They may push boundaries because they think they can get away with it, or they may not even be aware they are crossing a line. This is where your power lies. The moment you communicate a boundary clearly and assertively, you take control of the situation. Instead of allowing disrespect to escalate, you set a limit, showing that you won't tolerate being treated poorly. Setting boundaries doesn't require confrontation or anger. It can be done calmly and without drama. For example, if someone speaks to you in a disrespectful manner, instead of arguing back or feeling hurt, you can calmly say, I don't tolerate being spoken to like that. If the conversation continues in this way, I'll need to step away. This is a simple, clear, and firm statement that lets the other person know that you respect yourself enough to walk away from negativity. One of the key benefits of setting boundaries is that it helps you maintain your sense of control in any situation. Instead of letting someone else's behavior dictate how you feel or respond, you decide what is acceptable for you. If someone disregards your boundaries, you don't have to engage in a drawn-out conflict. You can simply walk away from the situation. When you walk away, you remove yourself from an environment of disrespect and protect your emotional well-being. You don't have to stay in a toxic or negative situation just to prove a point or to keep the peace. Walking away is a way of asserting that your peace is more important than any argument or conflict. It's a clear message that you will not allow disrespect to continue without consequences. It's important to understand that boundaries also include knowing when to let go of relationships that no longer serve you. Sometimes walking away isn't just about leaving a conversation. It's about distancing yourself from people who repeatedly disrespect you. If someone consistently treats you poorly despite you setting clear boundaries, it may be time to evaluate whether that relationship is healthy for you. Letting go of toxic people and relationships is an essential act of self-care. Another key element of setting boundaries is that it teaches others how to treat you. This can be one of the most effective ways to handle situations where you're repeatedly disrespected. Ultimately, setting boundaries and walking away is a form of self-preservation and empowerment. It protects your energy, your mental clarity, and your sense of self-worth. When you teach others that you will not tolerate disrespect, you create a life filled with healthier relationships and a greater sense of peace. Boundaries are not walls to shut people out. They are the doors you open when people treat you with the respect you deserve.